Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, we're going to explore some tips and tricks for writing and mapping in any alternate tuning. Now, before we begin, I just want to preface that the information in this lesson is going to come from a comprehensive guide that I've written, which is available on my Patreon page and link below. So in essence, the things that I'll talk about today are a greatly simplified version of that. So if you want to know more in more detail, then be sure to take a look at that. Anyways, let's get started. Step number 1, listen to a lot of music in alternate tunings. So this kind of goes without saying. You want to try and listen to as much music in alternate tunings as you can so that you can generate some inspiration to help you come up with the kind of stuff that you want to write. Step number 2, pick a key to write in. So when it comes to actual music making, we want to start by picking a key so that we can specify the types of scales and chords that we want to use in a composition. So for myself, deciding on a key in an alternate tuning is best done in consideration with the open notes of the tuning itself. For example, in DAE, A, C sharp, E, we have the pitches D, A, E, A, C sharp, and E as open notes. And if we play them together as a chord, we have an open D major 9 sound. So what we want to do is we want to figure out what notes these pitches are diatonic to, or we want to figure out what key does this chord belong to. And so if we think about it, open D major 9 here can be either the 1 chord of a D major scale or the 4 chord in an A major scale, or the key of A. So when it comes to picking what key to use, I find that you want to bounce between these keys that are diatonic and you want to choose one based on your aesthetic preference. So personally, I find that D major 9 here as an open sound works really well as the 4 chord of A major. So if I'm picking a key to write in DAE, A, C sharp, and E, I'm going to choose the key of A. If you want to know a bit more about this choice to play in the key of A over the key of D from a music theory perspective, meaning looking at things like these pitches and intervallic relationships in relation to the key, then again, I just want to mention that all of this kind of stuff is contained in the comprehensive guide that I wrote, and there is a pretty big breakdown over why you should play an A over D in that guide. So again, be sure to check that out if you're curious about that. With the key decided, focus should now shift to outlining usable notes, and this starts by building major scales vertically down each string, respective to the key of our choice. For example, if we've chosen the key of A for DAE, A, C sharp, E, then what we're going to do is we're going to build an A major scale vertically down each string. Now, if you don't remember how a major scale is built, it goes whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So let me walk you guys through this process here, starting on the lowest string. So what we want to do is we want to find out where our key center note is, in this case, the note A. And then what we want to do is we want to build that scale vertically, either ascending or descending. So if I start on A here, I'm just going to go like this. So I have an A major scale that's mapping out this territory of the fretboard on that one string, and I can do the same thing, but just descend. So I'll go. So if I do that, I go from the root to the 7th, to the 6th, to the 5th, and then to the 4th. For the next string, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we have an A string here, so that's our root, and then we're just going to go B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then A. And then we've got another A major scale. So if I'm continuing to map stuff out here, what I want to kind of try to realize is that when I do my mapping of these adjacent strings here, I want to try and be able to visualize how they relate to each other. So if I see that my major scale is covering these notes here, then I want to try and relate the mapping that I did on the other string to that, so that I'm creating a coherent, I guess, interlocked scale pattern across my entire fretboard. Anyways, if we do the next string, which is an E string, then we have E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So we could do it like that to find the root, or we could just find that sound here and then build our scale from that. So if I start on A here, then I'll be able to build an A scale again like this. And now I have all of these notes for A major all mapped out. So if I continue that process, just going through the next 3 strings, then I'll eventually have all of the notes of A major and all of the notes that I'll need for my composition. As a quick tip, we can potentially transfer information learned in standard tuning to any alternate tuning. So for example, let's say that I did some mapping in standard on the E and the A strings. What I can do is I can take any of the knowledge from my mapping, let's say on the A string, and I can apply that to the A string in D, A, E, A, C sharp, and E, because those strings are exactly the same. So if I know all of my notes here, like let's say I know B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and E, all on the A string, well, those are going to be exactly the same in D, A, C sharp, and E. And as another example, if I knew all the notes on the E string in standard, like if I knew that this was E, F, F sharp, G, A, and stuff like that, then I could just transfer that to all of the E strings in my alternate tuning here. So if anything, D, A, E, A, C sharp, E is a really friendly tuning to those who have played in standard and have done that mapping work, because you can transfer a lot of information over relatively easily. So my point is, don't do any more work than you need to. Anyways, continuing on with scales, another thing that I want to mention is that it is especially important to pay attention to where the root notes are for your key. So I might have mentioned this already a little bit, but if you're in the key of A, then you really want to know where all of the A notes are on each string. For example, we've got an A here, 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 and we've got an A here. And so the reason that this is important is that it not only shows you where the key centers are so that you can resolve your lines or just figure out where you're kind of aiming with your overall harmony, but it also gives you a visual reference point for building these scale patterns that I've shown you. And if you practice these vertical scales enough, you really start to be able to see them relative to the root. So for example, if I'm seeing this A note here, then what gets attached to my visual memory here is just this kind of structure of the scale. Like I can just see it going up and down because I know where that root note is. So if you learn those root notes, then it'll really help you with that contextualizing visual knowledge. Anyways, another thing to do after you've constructed your scales is to figure out your diatonic chords in the key. Now, if you don't know what diatonic chords are, then be sure to check out my video on basic music theory, or if you're a Patreon subscriber, then check out my handout on diatonic chords. Basically, though, the idea is that we want to find all of the chords that belong to the key that we're playing in. So for example, if we're in the key of A, then we want to figure out A chords, B minor chords, C sharp minor chords, D major chords, E major chords, and so on. And we want to know a couple voicings for each of them. Another thing that we want to do too is we want to take cool shapes that we find, like let's say I have a shape like this here, and we want to try and sequence them through the scale to generate a number of different shapes that fit sounds that we like. So if I have this add 9 here in an inverted form, then what I want to do is I want to move each scale tone to the next adjacent one so that I create a shape with a similar structure. For example, I could take this structure here, move it like this, like this, like this, like this, and so on, and then I'll end up getting 7 different chords that have a similar type sound. So what this process essentially is a diatonic sequence. So if you want to know more about this idea, then be sure to check out my video on diatonic sequences. But yeah, learn your diatonic chords. Learn how to say build an E major 13 chord so that you have a dominant sound. Or learn how to play some other voicings for D major 9 or A major 7 chords, but in their first inversion. Having different types of chords will just help you to express more complicated emotions with your music. So once we've mapped out some scale patterns and figured out some chords, the next thing that we want to do is move on to writing some actual music. And the reason that we want to do this is that it's, one, a lot more creative and fun than practicing rudiments, and 2, it'll actually help you to strengthen your fretboard knowledge. Because when we're practicing writing, we're actively trying to engage our visualization of all these tools that we've worked on. So when you're writing an idea, really try to see the scale patterns that you mapped out and really try to figure out some solutions from within those scales. Another thing that's good too about writing is that it's going to force you to use these scales creatively. So if you're writing ideas, you might come up with some new chord shapes, some new fingerings, and some new licks. And so when it comes to practicing scales as a whole, I find that writing is always the best way to do it, because to me, scale practice should always be an extension of some kind of greater creative process where you're trying to use the scale in a new and exciting way. So whether you're messing around with the scale in an alternate tuning or in standard, always try your best to be really creative with it, and always try to write as consciously as you can with all this kind of rudimentary stuff that you practice, but really try to spin it and adopt it for new things like new chords, new licks, etc. If you do that, I think it'll help you to understand the scale better, and it will help you to create your own style and your own sound. All right, folks, there you have it. If you like this video, then please make sure to like, share, and subscribe as I put out a new video every single week. And if you want to support the channel and get those lesson notes, then be sure to check out my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you guys will have access to some bonus content like guitar tabs, lesson notes, chord diagrams, and other little goodies like that. And honestly, the Patreon page really helps me out as it allows me to get some extra equipment to make these videos better. Finally, I also teach lessons through Skype. There's a link to my email address in the description below. So thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.